Welcome back to Feasting with Steve. If you've been wanting to make sourdough, you'll know that you need a starter. Your starter is your life and attitude of your sourdough. This is my sourdough starter, and it is named well wheaten. We'll need two basic ingredients, water and flour. When choosing your flour, make sure you choose an unbleached flour with a high moisture content. I'm using some white bread flour as well as some brown bread flour. We're also going to need a glass jar with a lid. First off, we're going to weigh our jar. Once we've done that, we're going to write the measurement on the lid. Now we're going to zero our scale with the jar on. Now that is done, we're going to start adding our flour. On the first day, you want to start with 40 grams of flour. So I'm going to do 20 grams white bread flour and 20 grams brown bread flour. A sourdough starter replaces those little packets of dry activated yeast. In ancient times, starters were always used when baking bread. There were no little packets of yeast and no supermarkets where you could get them. Now we'll pour in 40 grams of lukewarm water. The lukewarm water helps the natural yeast in the flour to activate. Once everything is measured out, we're going to mix it together. I find a chopstick works best. Add some water until you've got a thick cake batter consistency. Now we're going to put our loose-fitting lid on top of the jar. We don't want to use a tight-fitting lid as the starter can produce quite a lot of gas and we don't want it to explode. Now it's time for our day 2 feeding. As you can see, there is a little bit of activity and there are some bubbles in my starter. This won't always happen, but it's always a good sign if you see some bubbles. On day 2, we're going to feed it 50 grams of flour. I'm doing 25 grams white bread flour and 25 grams brown bread flour. Now we're going to add our water, making sure it's lukewarm. We'll add 50 grams of water to achieve the correct consistency. Then again, we're going to mix it together with a chopstick. As you can see, my dough was still a little bit tight, so I added a dash of water. And there we go, now we've got the right consistency. And we're ending day 2 with putting our lid on the jar. Wow, would you look at that? It's already day 3. As you can see, we've got quite a bit of activity, some larger bubbles and even some smaller bubbles around the side. Again, we're adding 50 grams flour and 50 grams water, except I'm only adding white flour as this is how I prefer it. But you can use whichever flours as long as they are unbleached. Now we stir it all together with our trusty chopstick. Again, my consistency wasn't exactly right, so I added a little bit of water. Here you can see our starter has like a thick cake batter consistency. Again, we'll end the day placing our lid on the jar. Finally, it's day 4. I like to think of the first 4 days as the days when you are growing your starter. The rest of the time you're just feeding and maintaining it. Again, we're adding 50 grams flour and 50 grams water. Now, I'm only adding white bread flour as this is the way I prefer it, but you're welcome to add any flour you've got. You can see on day 4 we have some pretty large bubbles on the outside of our jar, as well as inside. There's some activity going on within our jar, and our starter is getting to a point where we can use it. So we're going to pour in our water and then mix it with our trusty chopstick. You can see we've achieved the correct consistency here. You should also begin to smell the attitude of your starter. Again, we'll end the day placing our lid on the jar. Now onto our daily feeding. Since yeast is a living organism, we need to feed our starter every day, otherwise it will no longer be active and we won't be able to use it for baking. As you can see, on day 5, there's quite a bit of activity and lots of bubbles in the starter. The easiest way to feed your starter daily, in my opinion, is to draw a line on the middle of the jar. Every day we're going to feed it about 25 grams of flour and 25 grams of lukewarm water. If you don't want to measure it every day, you can just use a tablespoon and eye the water. Once the starter reaches the line you drew on the jar, pour out about half and then carry on with your daily feeding. By about day 7 of your starter, you should be able to use it to bake a loaf of sourdough bread. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content like this. I will be doing weekly uploads on this channel.